Yes, guys, build quality does matter, and here's why. One of the things Porsche is really known for is their high quality panel fits and good gaps, especially on the early hand-built cars. I mean, would you rather see this or this? So as you can see, my car is a quilt patch of parts from various cars. So can I make it look like the factory did? Well, stick around and let's find out.
Garage time.
Now, if you remember from last week, I finished this side of the car, but there's still a little bit of a large gap here. It's about 6 millimeters. I want to bring it down to 3, and I'm going to do that using lead. I like to use lead on these sharp corners that are prone to being dinged, or even high stress areas next to the hinges. I just feel that the lead has a much stronger bond and higher durability over plastic filler. Cleanliness is super important with lead. So you can see, I don't want to touch it because I cleaned it, but there's a couple scratched areas that I did with the die grinder just to make sure everything was out. From this side, it's got it nice and clean and ready for the flux and the lead. I like to heat soak most of the material around the area that I want to put the solder in. That avoids some of the distortion and also keeps the heat from just wicking away too quickly. It's much less likely to get distorted. The solder really doesn't like to interact with the steel, but this cleaning process with the flux just makes it happy so that the solder can do its job. And this brush is really helpful in just pushing that wetted surface around. Make sure that it doesn't ball up, because if it's balled up, it's not clean enough for the chemical or the metallic bond to occur. Lead never looks good after it's just been applied. And here you're seeing a little bit of the wax residue from the paddle. You're seeing a little bit of the flux residue that rises to the top. And you're seeing just globs of metal just piled on. And hopefully this is thick enough. I didn't want to, waste lead, but this is ready to go on the car. I might file the big chunks off and then fine tune it on the car. Okay, another aspect of this car that really needs some work is down here where the fender meets the rocker. So this gap right here is too large. I'm going to be putting some lead on that just to close up this gap, just like I'm doing on the doors. This gap can be a lot tighter because it is not a hinged gap. It's just a fixed gap. I'm just underneath here now into the car, and I'm cleaning out this weld so that I can put lead over the top of it. It's got to be very, very clean and no pinholes, no undercuts sections. So I'm just making sure this weld is as clean as can be. And I'm also thinking now, how am I going to get the solder upside down in this lower section? So I think what I'm going to do is down here where it's kind of invisible and I'm not going to have to modify it very much, I think I'm going to use the MIG welder and just sort of glob on a little bead along the bottom. And then from here to here, I think I could probably manage with the lead. And also I wanted to get a little bit of lead out here past this line. All right, I added some metal right down here in this lower section. So if you look at it from this edge, I added probably 3/16 of an inch of just weld material. So I think that's going to take care of the gap here at the very, very bottom. All right, here's more ugly metal. But I think I got it where it needs to be. I mean, definitely need to do the filing, but this should do the trick. Cross my fingers. Get on there. Voila. Okay, the fender's on there, and down here, I think I've got a little too much lead. So you can see the line of the door and the new rocker is, it's fitting very, very tight, but this gap is now too large. So that means that I need to file the lead, which it's always good to put more on than less. But I need to file this lead so that I can push this fender this way and get this 3mm gap back up here. So there's some filing required here. Up here, it's kind of the opposite. The lead is making it look much nicer, but this is a little bit bigger. This is about, let me get my gap checker. This is unpainted, so I don't need it to be exactly 3. You know, 4 would be fine, but it's a little lumpy. There's just a couple areas, like right here, this is perfect right here, but I'm gonna have to go back and add just a tiny bit of lead to a few areas. Now, before I add some more lead, I wanna fix the bottom first, because that's gonna shift this over. And when I shift that over, it's gonna change the gap. So one thing at a time, but I suspect that I didn't get enough lead on the top of the door. So the fender's been installed once again, and I've spent some time here on the lower section getting the lines correct. So I was able to get back to the 3, roughly 4mm gap here, and this is now tight like I want it. So the vertical line there is good. And then coming up here to the top, I did add a little bit more lead in this gap. So now this gap is very tight. Actually, it's less than 3, but that's okay because this is unfiled. I'm gonna go through now kind of a tedious process of getting this gap to be even, kind of smoothing out the bumps on both the fender and the leaded area. And then I'm gonna come back and just smooth it over with the file on the outside. And this is lining up really good. Everywhere you put the straight edge, really nice. Okay, I just finished filing this bottom half, just kind of a little out of breath. It's a lot of work, good for your shoulders, I guess. But there's a shot of that alignment. The gap gets a little bit bigger right there. And then up here, it's filed down probably a little on the tight side. But once again, this doesn't have any paint on it. So once this gets painted and the filler and sort of primer process, this is only going to get better. Woohoo! Right side done. Okay, that happy feeling of completing the metal work on the far side, the passenger side, is quickly going away. Have a look at this one. Here's the driver's side of my car, and to be fair, you know, nothing is adjusted. This is just being stored on here, but it's fitting very poorly. So here's an idea of the gaps along here. I can stick my entire finger in that. It's horrible. Down here at the bottom, it's loose, but there is a little bit of damage on the fender right down here. Looks like it's got a hit right there. And then back here, the door's not fully latched, but it needs to be adjusted. I can close it, and the gap back here is actually pretty good. It might actually be a little bit too tight, but the door needs to shift up because there's an offset right here. So I'm going to start by adjusting this door, getting it in its best average position, and then going with the same methods I did on the other side and just make it fit. Okay, here's the first attempt of adjusting the door, I should say. And it's definitely better. I have it lined up flush here on the top. The gap along the tub here is really good until it gets right here at the bottom. It's hard to tell on a black door, but this gap right here is a little bit large. And so I'm probably going to add some material there. Coming along the door bottom, it's really pretty good. It gets a little bit tighter here at the front. This is fitting tight right here, although the fender could be squeezed together here. This fender needs to get pulled in with another bolt. Although, one thing I do notice is that this line right here, this body line, is not intersecting this body line. So there's an offset between this and this. So it seems to me the door needs to come down, and once it comes down, I can probably shift it forward. Okay, here's an update on that edge weld bead. It's definitely lumpy, but this is raw welded and slightly stretched out with the hammer and dolly. Now I'm going to adjust the door hinges down and maybe shim it out just a little bit. All right, I think I have the door in its best sort of hinge position. So I have this level here at the top, and the gap here at the top is good. The gap along the back here where it meets the tub is good. And then up here at the front, I have this gap, which is sort of even with the gap in the back. And, you know, this is fitting okay. It's not perfect. It's gonna need some filler and same tricks I did to the other side. And then you can see the gap as it comes down. It's better than it was. I moved the fender back as far as I could, but this gap is still too big. So probably gonna have to use lead here for sure. And just in case you didn't believe me, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there is evidence of lead right there. Let me try to zoom in. Right there, there's where this is chipping. That is I think factory lead. I mean, I don't know the whole history of this door. Okay, the area that I touched up right here is looking better. It looks like I might need to add a little bit more metal a little further down the line, but that corner is looking much better after adding metal. Along the bottom, door gap is really good until it gets to the front. So I think because this was hit a little bit here, this gap here is just a little too short. So I'm gonna have to you know, heat this up, probably hammer it down, make sure that gap is consistent. So I'll probably lead the entire leading edge of the door just to get it to be the same gap as the other side. All right, I was able to get some really good gaps on the passenger side, and the driver's side is work in progress. So please check back next week. I'll have more videos. Also, if you're new to the channel and you're not aware, I have a playlist that has all my projects in sequential order. So check that out now. See you next week.